The entire restaurant fell silent when a little girl suddenly collapsed into tears beside her father's table. Plates stopped clinking. Conversations faded. Heads turned. But what hurt most was not the crying child. It was the look on her father's face, a look of exhaustion, heartbreak, and quiet humiliation that no one seemed to notice until it was almost too late. Before we begin, take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Lifeline Hub if you believe kindness can change lives and that everyone deserves a second chance. Your support helps spread stories that remind us what truly matters. The bright afternoon sun poured through the large glass windows of Maple Grove Bistro, one of the most popular family restaurants in the city. Outside, people walked casually along the busy sidewalks, carrying shopping bags and enjoying the pleasant weather. Inside, laughter and conversations filled the air. Families celebrated birthdays, friends gathered over lunch, and business professionals enjoyed expensive meals. Among them sat a man who seemed invisible. His name was Rowan Mercer. 34 years old, Rowan wore a faded blue shirt carefully ironed despite its age. His shoes showed signs of years of use. Dark circles rested beneath his eyes, evidence of countless sleepless nights. Across from him sat his 7-year-old daughter, Maren, whose bright smile was the only thing that still brought light into his difficult world. To everyone else, Rowan looked like an ordinary father taking his daughter out for lunch. No one knew how much that lunch meant. For nearly 3 years, Rowan had raised Maren alone after losing his wife, Selena, to a sudden illness. One moment they had been planning family vacations and dreaming about the future. The next, Rowan found himself standing beside a hospital bed, holding Selena's hand as life slipped away. The loss shattered him. But he had no choice except to keep moving forward. Every morning before sunrise, Rowan worked at a warehouse loading delivery trucks. During afternoons he repaired bicycles in a small neighborhood shop. At night he handled online customer support for a local company. He worked 3 jobs not because he wanted to, but because he had to. Rent kept increasing. Food prices kept rising. Medical bills from Selena's treatment still haunted him. Yet through every hardship, he protected Maren from seeing the worst of their struggles. When her birthday arrived, Rowan always found a way to buy a small cake. When school projects required supplies, he somehow managed. When she asked whether everything would be okay, he always smiled and said yes. Even when he wasn't sure himself. Today was special. Maren had achieved the highest grade in her class. For weeks she had talked excitedly about celebrating at Maple Grove Bistro after seeing advertisements in the neighborhood. The restaurant was far beyond Rowan's budget. But after saving small amounts for months, skipping lunches at work, and sacrificing countless personal comforts, he had finally gathered enough money to bring his daughter here. At least, he hoped he had. As they entered the restaurant, Rowan immediately noticed the difference in treatment. Well-dressed customers received warm greetings. Hosts smiled brightly. Servers rushed to accommodate special requests. When Rowan and Maren approached the front desk, the hostess barely glanced at them. After several uncomfortable minutes, they were seated near the back corner beside the kitchen doors. It wasn't the location that bothered Rowan. It was the message. He knew that look. He had seen it many times. The silent judgment. The assumption that because someone dressed simply, they mattered less. Still, he ignored it. This day belonged to Maren. She excitedly studied the menu while Rowan quietly calculated prices in his head. Every dollar mattered. Every choice mattered. Several servers passed their table without acknowledging them. Water arrived 20 minutes late. Other customers who arrived after them received appetizers before Rowan and Maren even placed their order. Maren noticed. Children always notice. She glanced around and then back at her father. Though she said nothing, Rowan recognized the sadness in her eyes. He forced a smile. He pointed out funny decorations. He told small jokes. He tried to protect her from the embarrassment he felt growing inside. Finally, a server approached. Her expression suggested she wanted to be somewhere else. Their order was taken quickly and without warmth. Then they waited again. Nearly 40 minutes passed. Around them, tables filled and emptied. Families laughed. Meals arrived. Desserts were served. Yet Rowan and Marin remained forgotten. The humiliation settled heavily on Rowan's shoulders. Still, he stayed calm. For Marin. Always for Marin. When their food finally arrived, it was cold. The fries were stale. The sandwich bread felt dry. The pasta Marin had eagerly anticipated looked as though it had been sitting for quite some time. Rowan stared at the meal. He knew complaining would likely lead nowhere. Instead, he quietly encouraged Marin to eat. She tried. But disappointment clouded her face. The celebration she had imagined was slipping away. Then something happened. At a nearby table sat an elderly man dressed in a simple gray jacket. Unlike many customers, he had spent much of the afternoon observing the room rather than staring at his phone. His name was Walter Hargrove. Most people inside the restaurant had no idea who he was. To them, he appeared to be another retired customer enjoying lunch. In reality, Walter was the founder of the restaurant chain. Though no longer involved in daily operations, he occasionally visited locations anonymously to evaluate customer experiences. That afternoon, he had witnessed everything. The ignored greetings. The delayed service. The dismissive attitudes. Most importantly, he had watched Rowan. He had seen a father desperately trying to create one beautiful memory for his daughter despite overwhelming hardship. Walter recognized something familiar. Years ago, he had been that father. Before success. Before wealth. Before recognition. He remembered eating cheap meals so his children could eat better. He remembered being judged for worn clothing. He remembered feeling invisible. As Walter continued watching, Marin accidentally knocked over her drink. The glass tipped. Juice spilled across the table and onto the floor. Instantly, several nearby diners looked over. The overwhelmed little girl froze. Her eyes widened. Then tears began flowing. Not because of the spill. Because it was the final disappointment in a day that was supposed to be special. Rowan immediately stood and comforted her. He apologized repeatedly. He searched for napkins. He cleaned as quickly as possible. Meanwhile, a nearby employee rolled his eyes dramatically. Another shook her head in annoyance. Someone muttered a complaint. The reaction hit Rowan harder than anyone realized. He wasn't angry. He was tired. So incredibly tired. Years of sacrifice. Years of grief. Years of carrying responsibilities alone. And now, in front of his daughter, he felt like a burden. A problem. Someone who didn't belong. Marin noticed her father's expression. That hurt her more than anything. The little girl wrapped her arms around him. The restaurant grew quieter. And then Walter stood. Slowly. Purposefully. He walked toward Rowan's table. People watched curiously. Some assumed he would complain about the disturbance. Others expected him to ask for management. Instead, Walter knelt beside Marin. His gentle smile immediately captured her attention. He handed her a folded paper napkin shaped like a flower. A simple gesture. Yet it stopped her crying. Then Walter looked at Rowan. In that moment, two fathers silently understood each other. No explanations were necessary. No long speeches. Just understanding. Walter requested to speak with the manager. Within minutes, the manager arrived. His confident expression vanished when he recognized Walter. The entire staff suddenly became nervous. Whispers spread rapidly. Employees exchanged worried glances. Many finally realized who the elderly customer truly was. Walter calmly described everything he had witnessed. He spoke about customer service, respect, dignity, compassion. He explained that a restaurant's purpose extended beyond serving food. It existed to serve people. And people deserved respect regardless of appearance, income, or status. The manager stood speechless. Several employees lowered their heads. Around the restaurant, customers listened quietly. Some nodded in agreement. Others looked uncomfortable. Walter then surprised everyone. He returned his attention to Rowan and Marin. Rather than offering charity, he offered recognition. He asked Rowan about his life, his work, his daughter, his dreams. At first Rowan hesitated. Years of hardship had taught him not to expect kindness from strangers. But Walter's sincerity gradually broke through those defenses. As Rowan shared pieces of his story, many nearby customers became emotional. They learned about Selena. They learned about the 3 jobs. They learned about the sacrifices made for a little girl's happiness. By the time he finished, several people were wiping away tears. Walter felt deeply moved. Not because Rowan's story was tragic, but because it demonstrated extraordinary courage. Every day Rowan woke up and continued fighting. Not for himself. For his daughter. That kind of strength deserved admiration. The restaurant manager immediately replaced their meals with freshly prepared dishes. This time the food arrived hot and beautifully presented. Staff members apologized sincerely. Yet the biggest change wasn't the food. It was the atmosphere. People who had ignored Rowan now saw him. Not as a struggling customer. Not as a man in worn clothes. But as a devoted father. The entire restaurant seemed transformed. Customers smiled warmly. Servers became attentive. Children at nearby tables waved to Marin. For the first time all afternoon, the little girl genuinely smiled. And that smile made every sacrifice worthwhile. As lunch continued, Walter remained with them. He shared stories about his